debugger, reverse, there we go, all right. Cool. So let's start with the end in mind. So we are on Thursday, our second day of our week. So let's take a look at where we're at and what we're working on. I'm still trying to use these M95s. They, I feel like I have to take very deep breaths with them. But they gave any faculty that were here teaching on campus, they gave us 10 of them. So figured I might as well try to use it. But it makes my face itch. So I've got this mask underneath it to try to, I don't know, struggle, right? The mask struggle is real. So actually, I might just take the N95 off. Just go with that. All right, so let's see where we're at. So we are the 10th, right? So the 10th, middle of week 4. So we've learned about speaking to inform. We've learned about informative speech types, methods. Do we go into the methods, right? Define, describe, explain, demonstrate. So what we have really today is just to kind of focus a little bit more on outlining, and then because the analyzing the audience is a virtual lecture. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, make sure you watch that on Brightspace. So that kind of frees us up a little bit in class to move forward and focusing on outlining the speech. But let's talk about what we're applying this to. So our practice speech that we'll do on Tuesday will be the Civic Engagement News practice speech. So just a reminder to find a news article that you'll then share with us. You can practice using the outline template to write this. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, you're just in class sharing with us a news story. Try to have an introduction, body, conclusion. So we're going to start practicing like what we'll do for the formal informative speech. And then we're also, by Tuesday, selecting our topic. And so that's what we'll review today so that you are all set for that and preparing for that. So just a reminder, if you click on any of these links, if I try to click on one now, let's see, yep, it pulls up this Blackboard to put in a username or password. So if anything does that, just go over here to Course Resources, and then you'll be able to find the file and download it. So that's my workaround, because I've not gotten to fix all of them, all of those links yet. So let's, so that's what we're working on. So civic engagement news practice speech, and then selecting your topic, which really is more selecting your subject for the formal informative speech. So then next week we'll do some brainstorming in class. So my St. Xavier classes are a week ahead, so I've been doing what I will do with you all next week, I'm doing with them this week. And it's pretty fun. We go through and actually brainstorm out and talk through and write together speeches from scratch. And so bring your ideas. And I had a couple students today share the ideas that they brought to class were what they are wanting to do. So we were able to actually go through and write out a draft introduction, body, conclusion for the speech that they are interested in delivering. So we can do that as well. And so that's what we'll do next week specifically. Spend some time making sure you know at least what's expected with the draft, because that's the next thing that will be due is the informative speech outline draft. So what we talk about today and then what we practice doing and brainstorming next week, that activity will ensure that you are prepared to submit a draft of your informative speech. And we'll take a look at a couple examples of informative speech drafts as well. So that's what we have coming up. So let's talk about outlining the speech. I'm going to give you some insights and tips, some reminders for you to take notes on, and then I'll pull up just some topics, and we can go through and pair up our topics and our methods and our types. Has anyone submitted their topic yet on Brightspace? Okay, so what we're talking about today will prepare you to do just that by Tuesday. So let's talk about the two different outlines that you will be preparing. So again, everything we're working on now is preparing us for that informative speech, the first of the formal 3 speeches. Informative, persuasive, and then CRO speech. Again, the CRO speech is civically responsible organization speech, and that's where you choose to either inform us or persuade us. But so everything we're doing is preparing us for these speeches. So what we're starting with is we're working on this preparation outline. So the preparation outline is just that, a detailed outline of what that includes: your introduction, body, conclusion, your main points, transition statements, and we'll pull up an outline here and review some of that. So this preparation outline, you'll start with a draft, and you'll submit this draft to me not Tuesday of this week, but Tuesday of the following week. And that draft lets me know the direction you're going. It lets me know, it lets me kind of review where you're at. And so we start with this draft. Once you submit that draft, I will review it, I'll give you feedback, and then you proceed in doing research and filling in that draft to make it a full sentence preparation outline. And so that preparation outline includes all of this, right? The title, the purpose, the introduction, main points, subpoints, transitions, conclusions, and references. And again, I give you a template that has all of this on there. There's some educators that don't give templates, and so you have to, essentially, they share this slide and say, go forth and create it. And then after my first semester, I soon realized it'd be helpful if I actually gave you exactly an outline that would be helpful, not just in this class, but moving forward. So that's why we'll dive into that. But the outline gives us this visual framework. So this visual framework is the symbolization and indentation that shows the relationship among ideas. And you may do this in an English class, as a preparation to writing a paper. But for us, that symbolization, that indentation, understanding the relationship among ideas is central to our delivery of our speeches. And so an example of that framework, right, the main point, subpoint, or supporting points, right? So you'll see in the outline that there's that indentation, right, and Roman numerals and numbers and letters. So keep that there. My Roman numerals are actually, they're actually shaded in black for some reason, so I'll have to go in and correct that. But this visual framework helps us establish a relationship among ideas, which is essentially what we're trying to do when we deliver our speeches as well. Just a reminder that you should have a references section, so a list of sources that are in your speech in your preparation outline. Have I shown you how to do research using the school resources? Did I show you that on Tuesday? No? Okay, I'll show you that today. I think that was the one thing that I meant to do on Tuesday that I didn't get to. So, matter of fact, I'll just do it right now while I'm thinking about it. So when it comes to doing research, and actually, let me finish talking about the speaking outline, and then when we talk about materials, I'll show you how to do that. So the speaking outline is the second outline. So it's somewhat of a crescendo. You start with your preparation outline, you start with a draft of that, you build to it, you add to it, you fill it in, you've got a full sentence version, and then from there, you pick out key words and develop your speaking outline. So this is a brief outline that you're going to use to actually deliver your speech. So we don't actually deliver our speeches from the preparation outline. We transition that into a speaking outline, and then that's what we deliver our speech from. And again, those are keywords, quotes, statistics, but not full sentences. And we transfer our speaking outline to note cards. That's the final stage. So you should have a Word document that's your preparation outline. You'll have a draft. You'll submit that to me. You'll move forward in doing research and creating your full sentence version. Keep working on that, and as you work on that, you then take pieces of that out and create your speaking outline. So you'll have 3 to 5 note cards that you'll need to transfer your speaking outline to. we say 3 to 5 note cards. I say that specifically for this course because your speech is about 3 to 5 minutes. That's about a note card for each minute of your speech. Also, you want to have at least 2 to 3 main points in your informative speech. And so it really allows you to have one note card for your introduction, one for your conclusion, and then 1, 2, or 3 note cards for the body, for the main points of your speech. And so when you come up here to deliver your speeches, your formal speeches, you'll want to lay out your note cards in order. So you'll want to make sure they have numbers on them, that they're only written on the front side, so not on both sides, so that you can lay them out on the lectern here and see them very clearly. So that's your speaking outline. So again, our speaking outline gives us or shows us this visual framework of the preparation outline. So we're, again, dissecting that preparation outline to then create our speaking outline. We want to make sure that what we transfer to our note cards is legible for us. So some people may use bigger note cards because they need to write bigger, and that's perfectly fine. So just make sure it's big enough so that you can see it, not having your note cards right up in front of your face, but having them here on the lectern. You do want to keep your speaking outline brief so that you aren't reading word for word, but delivering what we call extemporaneously. So you've prepared in advance, you've internalized your message, and you really just need the note cards to guide you via those keywords, or if there's a quote you want to make sure is correct, or statistics you need to make sure are accurate. So your speaking outline is very brief. The other thing that you put on your speaking outline that's not on the preparation outline are going to be your delivery cues. And so delivery cues are going to help you get through your speech. So they are directions for delivering key parts of your speech. So key words such as first, next, last, right? Essentially your transition statements, your preview step, your review step. Those things help guide you throughout your speech. So you'll want to make sure those cues are on your note cards. You'll have, and we'll get into delivery in a couple weeks. We'll learn about delivery and using PowerPoint visual aids. But you'll want to have cues on your note cards to remind you to do specific gestures with specific words. You'll want to remind yourself about movement. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about the speaker's triad or speaker's triangle, where you move away from the lectern for just a period of time. So you'll want to put a delivery cue on your notes to remind you to do that. So, and again, that's on the speaking outline and on your note cards that aren't necessarily written into your preparation outline. So let's talk about organizing it. So the goal, again, with all of our speeches is to organize our speech in a way to achieve whatever the result is, the purpose is, in regards to our specific audience. So for a special occasion speech, we organize our speech to entertain, to provide humor, to commemorate, to introduce. For an informative speech, the goal is to inform, to convey knowledge and understanding, right? And so that is our purpose and the purpose to which we are organizing the speech. For a persuasive speech, the goal, the particular result is to persuade someone to a specific outcome, to either believe us about something or agree with us about something, or to go out and do something. So again, the way we are organizing our speeches have a strategic purpose. Our main points are developed specifically in the body of the speech. It can be very easy to want to go ahead and start giving us main points in your introduction, but make sure that you're very intentional at ensuring your main points don't start until the body of your speech. And then most of our speeches will have 2 to 5 main points. Again, that's mostly just for time purposes, since the speeches are between 3 to 5 minutes. If you have too many main points, you risk going over time. And when we get to delivery and rehearsing your speech, we'll talk more about strategies you can use to ensure that you are within that time frame. So right here, I wanted to talk about supporting points. So if you remember, I guess it was the week we had the snow days, I recorded a lecture on gathering data and supporting material. And the one thing that wasn't included as a part of that lecture was showing you specifically where to go to find academic resources. And so again, the material that you're finding might be books, they might be websites, they could be news articles, all of which is most likely you're able to find that using a search engine like Google, right? But remember, we want to make sure that any source that we use is a credible source. And the way we ensure that credibility is authorship, sponsorship, and recency. And so we want to make sure we double check who the author is and what their credentials are. And sometimes when we're finding information on the World Wide Web, it's hard to determine who the author is and who their credentials are. So one of the best ways to get credible sources is to do it through the school's library and through the databases that they provide. And I haven't shown you this yet, right? Okay, so I showed this. Okay, so yeah, this was the thing I meant to show you on Tuesday that I showed my class yesterday. So that's why I've got it mixed in my head. So what you'll want to do is go to the City Colleges of Chicago website. Have any of you done research like this using academic databases before? So this is going to be a skill that will help you, not just in this class, but any class. When they say go out and do research, again, we could go to Google, we could go to Wikipedia, and those are maybe good places to start. But if you actually need to find credible sources, this is the best way to do it. You have access to databases through your tuition, through the school. And it's important to note because there's a lot of businesses that also pay for access to academic databases. But if you are just by yourself on your own, and you're not connected to an academic institution or a business that pays for access, you got to pay for it yourself, and that can be quite expensive. And so there was a short period of time where I wasn't connected to any academic institution or business that paid for it, and I looked to pay for it out of pocket, and it was way outside my budget. And because I was trying to do some research. So let me show you how to access this. So again, you know that you have access to it through the school. So I would start with the library. So there's a variety of libraries that we have in the City College of Chicago system. We could just start by, again, going to the home, logging into MyCCC, clicking on Library Search Tool, and then we've got a search bar right there to search for anything either in the library or we could just search for everything. What I prefer to do is pull up what is probably considered the most dependable academic database out there. And you can access this through any of the library websites, the specific school library websites. Since we're at Harold Washington, I'll click on Harold Washington. And from here, you'll see a full list of databases. Let me zoom into that to make that easier to see. So under library sources, full list of library databases. You'll also see some other resources if you want. Sources for books, magazines, an online book catalog. So all those are helpful. Once you click on the databases, you're going to see databases in order, in alphabetical order. If you're doing research related to a specific topic, right, like education, or here we have family and society studies, right? If you're doing research in a specific area, then yeah, sure, look for a database related to those. We also have the Chronicle of Higher Education. You have access to the Chicago Tribune, so you don't have to pay for access to that because you get access to that through this database. But what I recommend doing is going to this right here, Academic Search Complete, which is also known as EBSCOhost. So you may see it called one or either of those. So EBSCOhost, this is the place to go to find academic journal articles, so research. When you're listening to the news and people say this new study was just published in the New England Journal of Medicine, well, the way they found that was through, unless they have a subscription to that specific journal, chances are the way they found that research was through this search engine, EBSCOhost. So the way it works is similar to other search engines like Google, But what I'm going to show you is what you should use to refine your results to help you narrow the haystack when you're doing your research. So let's just start with a general search term. What's a general search term that you might be searching for either for your speech or maybe in another class, it doesn't matter. What's a general search term? Subject, topic.
Environmental institutions and all.
There you go, environmental. Environmental institutions. I'm going to do organizations. Environmental organizations. There we go. Environmental organizations. So that's going to be our search term. We're just going to hit search. And so this is, again, what I recommend. So that's going to be our initial search phrase. And we can narrow it down through or limit it to a variety of things. So here's what I recommend. First, I recommend checking full text. So you see right now we have 5,000 search results. That's a lot to look through, right? If we're trying to find something very specific. So I recommend limiting to full text. It's important to note that just because it's on here doesn't mean you'll be able to read the entire article. So you're going to have to limit it to things that you can read, and full text is going to do that. The other thing that I recommend doing is selecting peer-reviewed. So peer-reviewed journal articles are the most credible source that exists. Because of the peer review process, after you submit something to a journal, it's usually a panel of 5 or 6 people that review it. If they don't vote in favor of it being published, it's not published. They also can provide recommendations for changes, and if you as the author don't make those changes, it's not published. So the peer review process can be quite extensive and actually can take a couple years to have research that you've done actually published. Now, specifically in the medical field or in the health sciences, there are mechanisms in place to speed up that process, because a lot of times, at least in the health sciences, people's lives depend on this research being published. In the social sciences, lives aren't as dependent on our research, and so I've had articles that I've published in journals that, I started research in 2011. You go through the conference presentation process first. So you go to conferences presenting your research, getting feedback from peers and other scholars. Then, after you've gone to a conference or two, then you submit it for publication and go through that peer review process. So that's why it can take some time for initial research. So I started some research in 2011, didn't get published till 2014. And so it's important to know that sometimes, and I had other research I did in 2013, didn't get published till 2015. And so that process from research to publication can take some time, and that's important to note. So you want to make sure it's peer reviewed. So let's check that box, and then that's going to limit. So now we're down to 13,000 results. Some other things I recommend doing if you're researching something that's more recent. Narrow the search date to around the last decade. So we can say 2012. And narrow down those search results. Here we go. We're down to 700 results. Some other things we might want to do is narrow down by language. So we see we're still showing some publications like this one right here. Not sure what language that, Turkish. There we go. That's in Turkish. I don't read Turkish, so going to want to make sure those aren't showing up. So I'm going to click English. That's going to narrow my search results down even further to 599 results. I'm going to specifically want academic journals, not necessarily magazines, so that's going to limit my results even further. I could, take a look at geography. So are you interested in specifically the United States?
Yes.
So check that. And here we have now 26, which is a lot better than, 13,000 or something that we had before? And so these are all related to at least environmental organizations. Now, from here, you can change your search terms to narrow down your search terms or add different search terms and ensure that the refined result stays the same, including all of this, and you will be getting a smaller chunk of articles to review in preparation for your for your speech. So, so let's just kind of scroll through and see what stands out here. Let's see. Here we go. Any stand out to you?
Wait, my eyes don't move that fast, hold on. What's that one with the R?
Reflexive research ethics for environmental health and justice. What was it about environmental institutions you were interested in finding out?
Just more like nonprofit that works with, younger people.
Okay, yeah. So maybe let's add nonprofit to the list. There we go. Now it's down to 8. How radical is too radical? Public perception of Taiwanese environmental. So let's make sure our limiting, I don't think it's going to show us, let's see. I think it removed that search requirement. So let's just pick one at random here. So understanding collaborative value of environmental, nonprofit, and renewable energy businesses. So here you'll see you have a full text PDF that you can download, you can save, that you can reference. When you are reading academic journal articles, do not read the entire thing. That is, there's an art of skimming that I didn't learn until graduate school. I wish I knew it in undergrad. So what we read, because academic journal articles are written in a very specific way. They're not written like novels. There's an actual specific uniform way that we write academic scholarly articles. They should all have an abstract. The abstract is a good summary, so start there. Read that first. Then we're going to look for anything that says introduction and conclusion. So here we have an introduction. Again, you might find some good quotes. Environmental issues such as urban smog, polluted waterways, endangered species, soil erosion have continued to spark the creation of environmental nonprofit organizations. That might be a cool quote, depending if it's relevant to your speech. It looks like they're talking about social movements creating new organizational forms. So here we have some cool things in the introduction that might be good sources to quote. From there, they're going to provide, essentially by topic, they're going to provide concepts, key concepts from their research. So here you have political ideology, environmental philosophy, nonprofit business partnerships. So if you want to read more about that, you can. If not, scroll down to whatever says conclusion. You can skip anything that says methodology or research design. We're not a research class. We're not full-time researchers, so that unless you're interested in doing research, we don't necessarily have to read any of that. But here we have something that says results. So that could be relevant. Those could be some valuable data or statistics, right? So again, one way we get data and statistics is through news, and the news reporting that information. The other way is through journal articles, just like this. So it does require a little research to dig out these statistics, these data. But again, this is how we do it. This is how we find credible sources. So let's scroll down to, so those were the results. Let's see if there's a conclusion. There we go, conclusion. So that's going to incorporate their key findings, which they say actually right here. So that you can tell, I can tell this is written based on the format that it should be, because they include their key findings in their conclusion. So if that's relevant to you, then go, copy and paste into your speech and move forward. If this is related to your subject and you're like, nothing really stood out to me from it, take a look at the references for that specific article and just look at some of the titles in the references section. So creating value in nonprofit business collaborations. And so take a look and see if some of the sources that they cite in this article are relevant to your speech, or to your paper, or to whatever it is you're working on, project. From here, you can go over to the right-hand side. There's this little yellow piece of paper. That's the Cite button. When you click that, it's going to pull up all the different citation methods. And so from here, you can copy and paste this citation in APA format, copy and paste it into your Word document, and you've got your reference right there. and you know that it's in the correct format. So you don't have to go creating or typing it out yourself and double checking its formatting. You can just copy and paste it. And what I recommend is, as you're doing your research for your speeches, if you read something and you're going to use something from it, or you think you may use it, copy and paste it and create just a master references list, or what we call a bibliography. Anything you don't use, you can delete later, but at least you've got it and you don't have to go back and find it or recreate it. And that's what I do. That's what I'm doing right now with my doctoral program. I have a lot of articles that I'm reading every week, and I copy and paste those citations. Sometimes the professor provided the articles, but it didn't provide the citations, and so I go into EBSCOhost, search for the article, and then click this site to get the actual citation. So that's how we find academic articles for when we're doing research. The other place you could go that doesn't require a login is Google Scholar. We can do the same search term, environmental non-profit organizations. And you'll see some of these have PDFs that you can access, again, for free. But you won't be able to access everything that you can via EBSCOhost because, again, EBSCOhost is a subscription-based database. So this could be a good place to start. You're limited in how you can refine this information. So again, it's a good place to start, but may not, if you don't find anything, I would recommend. Or if you do find something and it doesn't have, like right here, it doesn't have a PDF or a way you can actually read the article, then I would search for it in EBSCOhost or Academic Search Complete. But Google Scholar also has this little button right here with Cite, where you can copy and paste the citation into your references section. So there you go. So the other place you'll want to go is going to be the OWL Purdue website. And this is going to be the OWL Purdue Writing Lab. And you'll want to, I get lost going to the beginning, so I just do OWL Purdue APA. And it pulls up specifically APA. So this is where you can double check your citations to make sure when you're citing in the text of your speech, it looks accurate. So here you go. According to Jones, and then you have the date there, and then you have the page number at the end. That's an in-text citation. So that's what you should have in the body of your speech. If you're using a quote from a source, if you are using examples or stories from a source, make sure you have those citations. Then we have the references section. You can go, we're in APA format. So the other type of source you'll most likely be using, where you'll need to use this to make sure your references are in order, are going to be, here we go, electronic sources. So like websites. So here's an example of how you would put your reference for a website. The order and then an example. So websites, so you know how to find research articles and cite them. You know how to find, you would search books the same way through EBSCOhost or through Google Scholar. And then if you find any general websites and are pulling information from that, then you need to make sure you cite it and reference it that way. So that's going to be the content, your main content of your speech. Any questions about that? So when we talk about doing research, that's what this is. That's when I tell my wife, all right, I'm going to go spend some time at the library doing some research, it's usually I've got some search terms, keywords that I got to search for, and I'm just digging through EBSCOhost for finding my results, and then downloading a series of articles, PDFs, to then pull up on my computer and read and make notes in. That's what we do. And so when writing a thesis like I did for my master's, or like right now as I'm preparing to write a dissertation, it's really just creating really big references sections or annotated bibliographies where we have the reference and then what's important from that reference. So quotes, statistics, we may have direct quotations, or I may type a quick paraphrase of information from that source. So we have that kind of annotated bibliography, and that's where we start. And then that's what we pull into either papers or presentations. So that is doing research. So let's review and dive into some of the organizational patterns that you're going to use to organize your main points. So I'll go back to laptop. So the first we have, and we've covered this previously, right? Just a little bit in regards to introduction speeches, but I want to make sure that you are, as you are doing your research, again, the things that you want to decide up front as part of the preparation stage or preparation phase is what is your type? Is it an object, process, event, or concept? So that narrows down what you're searching for. What method of, what informative method are you going to use for the body of your speech? Are you going to describe things, explain things, define things, or demonstrate things? And then what order are those main points going to be? So I want to give you some examples of those main points. So first we have chronological. So this is going to be in order of time, in order of date, in order of seasons. So here's an example I have of a chronological, and we've not gone through this yet, have we? It's the first time you're seeing this slide? Okay. All right, just thank you. It's the end of the week. It's like, for me, it's like Thursday, and it's like, I've done this 3 times already, so I want to make sure I'm correctly doing it and not repeating in this class. All right, so here we have chronological organizational patterns. So this speech is about esports in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, and today. And as you see, those are my main points, and then my supporting points is where I put that detail, right? The examples, the description. My main points are going to be keywords or phrases. They're not going to be very long. So that's an example of chronological organizational pattern. So again, in order of time. The next type of organizational pattern that we didn't use for speeches of introduction is going to be a spatial organizational pattern. So these are where your main points are in order of some kind of directional pattern. So this could be top to bottom, bottom to top. This could be north-south, east-west. This could be inside out or outside in. There's a variety of ways. It just is based on direction. I had a student do an informative speech on Poland and the cities you should visit in Poland from east to west. And she did east, south, and west were the 3, I can't remember the specific cities, but they were in that directional order. Example I have here is about a hurricane, one of the speech about a hurricane, where we start in the center of the hurricane in the eye, and we move out to the eye wall, and then finally we talk about the spiral rain band. So we're moving from the inside out. We've also, I think, seen a clip about the Statue of Liberty, where he's doing it from top to bottom, or bottom to top. And so, again, all those in any kind of direction would be a spatial organizational pattern. And let's listen just quickly to an example of that hurricane informative speech.
Now that we've looked at the relatively calm eye of the hurricane, let's take a look at the next ring of the storm. Surrounding the eye of the hurricane is the eye wall, a dense ring of clouds that produce the most wind and rainfall. It's very hard to see the eye wall from above, but you can see it more clearly in this graphic. The eye is the lighter colored area in the middle, and the eye wall is the darker area on the sides. Winds in the eye wall exceed 155 miles per hour, which is why this part of the storm can cause so much destruction.
So that's an example of spatial organizational pattern. We have the causal organizational pattern, which we'll reserve this mostly for persuasive speeches. Actually, these next 2, I just want to share with you now, but we'll primarily use them in persuasive speaking. We could still do a pretty good informative speech where we could share just the information, the facts about the cause and the effect relationship of something. But if we're specifically talking about problems or issues, then we tend to stray more persuasive. And so I want to make sure we're sticking purely to facts and information. So that's why I encourage you just to hold off and use this for persuasive speaking. But I want to make sure you're aware of it. This would be an example of a causal organizational pattern. So the first main point is the cause, second main point is the effect. So in this, the United States faces a growing shortage of trained nurses in all parts of the country, and the effect is if the shortage continues, it will strain the entire healthcare system, which we're actually kind of seeing that now. I've had this on my slide for the last 5 years, and we're actually seeing that become an increasingly greater problem. So then we have the problem-solution organizational pattern. Similar to cause and effect, first main point is the problem, second main point is the solution. I have an example, I have a video, I won't show it, it's somewhat gruesome, but we'll revisit this when we talk about persuasive speaking. Again, first main point is the problem, second main point is the solution. So hopefully you're getting, right, your organizational pattern is the order of your main points. The textbook also provides some others. Comparative is one, and there's also maybe narrative, I think, is also in the text. If you want to use those, feel free to, but I just encourage students to stick to these. Topical, chronological, spatial. So topical, the simplest of them all. Your main points are just divided into topics, just logical subtopics underneath your major topic, or we would say topics underneath your general subject. And so an example of that is this. So Josephine Baker as an entertainer, as a spy, and as a civil rights activist. So here you see my main points aren't just one word, they're a phrase. And the phrasing is in parallel structure, as an entertainer, as a spy, as a civil rights activist. So you might have main points that could work well if you create some kind of parallel structure for them. So I would encourage you to give that some thought. You do want to make sure that you keep your main points very separate and distinct. Sometimes it's easy for us to blend them together, and so it's important to give some thought to each main point and make sure it's a separate thought, a separate idea. As I mentioned, try for the same pattern of wording. If you can have some kind of parallel structure, that strengthens your speech. And then we also want to make sure that we balance the time for each of our main points. And so, again, when we're passionate about a subject, sometimes we can spend a lot of time on our first main point and not enough time on our second main point. So as we're writing our speech, we want to make sure that we've balanced our main points so that we're giving equal time to each of them. Oh, that was the slide I meant earlier. So materials used to support your main points are going to be what the research that you're doing, right? Those gathering data and supporting materials. We also have these transition statements, and the transition statements are what guide us from main point to main point. They're a word or phrase that connects these ideas. The textbooks may also call them a connective. Technically, transition statements are just one type of connective. There's also signposts and previews and reviews and summaries, but I lump those all into transition statements. And I want to show you specifically, again, this is the Professor Martin method of public speaking. And so I've modified some things that may be a little bit different than the textbook. And so let's take a look at the outline, and let's kind of go through and make sure we're on the same page about what this should be. So the first thing is what you're preparing for next week are two things. One, it's your civic engagement news practice speech, right, where you're just going to find a news article, share it with us. Try to use this outline as best you can, but it does not have to be a detailed, fully thought out, informative speech, right? The goal is just to be able to inform us in class and to speak from some notes. So again, it doesn't have to use everything. The other thing that we're preparing is what do you want to inform us of for your formal informative speech? And so you'll see on Brightspace a discussion post called Selecting Your Topic. I really should change that to Selecting Your Subject, because that's really what you're doing. You're selecting your subject, but more than just claiming your subject, you are letting us know the direction that you want to go in your speech. And so you'll complete the preparation stage of this outline, and that is what you'll post on Brightspace. And so you'll need to choose, right? You'll need to select. So you select your subject, This is specifically to inform, so you can delete to persuade. Again, the way I've created these outlines is so they can be modified for different types of speeches, so you can delete anything that's not relevant. Specific purpose, to inform my audience of what? What is the learning objective? Again, informative speeches are just like teaching. You have a specific goal or result in mind for your audience. What is that? And put that there. What do you want the audience to have learned by the end of your speech? You select the method. So again, are you providing synonyms, meaning, background, or historical context? It's an informative speech of definition. Are you providing features of something, of an object or an event? Are you describing things in a way that we can visualize it? That's an informative speech of description. Are you providing the how or the why of something? That's an informative speech of explanation. Or are you demonstrating how a process is accomplished? That is an informative speech of demonstration. So you'll choose one of those, and you can delete the ones that you don't need. The type, again, your subject will fall into one of these categories, an object, and again, human beings, again, we don't usually call them objects, but for the purposes of a speech, they are stable in form. Human beings aren't necessarily morphing into other things, so they are considered an object. So process is being a systematic series of actions, an event, anything that happens or is regarded as happening or will happen, and then concept is kind of the broad one, right? And we covered that on Tuesday. We just talked through organizational patterns, so choose one of these: topical, chronological, spatial. You could do cause and effect if it makes sense, but again, I would encourage you to hold off and do that for persuasive speaking. The one I didn't provide a slide for was comparative, and that's just comparing one or more things for your main points. And I'll show you some examples. Central idea, you can include that if you'd like. Title is just a creative way of sharing your information. So that is what you're preparing for your informative speech. And let me show you some examples of that. So my first example, my subject is cars. And this is just quickly typed up, just brainstorming. My informative speech method is going to be description. So I'm going to describe the features of my subject being cars. My organizational pattern that I want to do specifically is topical. So I'm going to have 3 topics. If I did chronological, I would probably maybe do an order of when they were created or designed. So here I have the Corvette, the Camaro, and the Volt. And my subject or title would be something like 3 types of Chevy cars. I could do this a little bit differently. Same subject. Again, this is where you decide the direction you want to go. So my same subject is cars, but maybe I want to do something more explanatory and use that explanatory informative method where I'm explaining the how or the why. In which case I'm comparing in this case I would probably compare Ford versus Toyota. And in comparing the differences between these car companies, right? How are these car companies different would be what I am explaining. So again, the informative speech method tells you what information you're going to go out and collect to then share with us. So that's why having done the preparation stage and submitting that by Tuesday lets you know what direction you need to go to collect information for your speech. Another subject, you can tell I like cars, right? Car engines. I could do explanatory, and again, I could get based on the direction you want to go, would change it. So this would be explanatory, chronological, organizational pattern, and sharing in order of when these were created. So first were gas engines, second were electric, and third were these hybrid engines. So my subject or title would be the past, present, and future of car engines. Saying something is saying the history of something or the past, present, and future of something tells your audience subconsciously that it is chronological. A different direction I could go would be if I did a definition, an informative speech of definition, where again I'm providing the historical context. Maybe I'm providing synonyms actually in this. It looks like I'm providing synonyms, definitions of things. So what is a gas engine? What is an electric engine? What is a hybrid engine? So here, using just a different organizational pattern and a different informative method, but essentially talking about the same types of things, just going about it a little bit differently. So you see how you can really mix and match, right? I mean, some things don't make sense, but it really is. I mean, what is the information you're wanting to share? And if you start going a direction, you're like, not really digging it, feel free to change it. Once you post your subject on Brightspace, you should be able to go in and edit it if you need to change it. If not, just post a new post. And that just lets everybody else know what you are specifically working on. Here's another one where I'm also doing an informative speech of definition, or to define, but I'm doing a different organizational pattern where I'm comparing these engines. So gas versus hybrid, hybrid versus electric. And so here I'm sharing 3 types of cars, the similarities and their differences. Using the terms similarities and differences tells us that it's comparative. That's a comparative organizational pattern. So those are just some quick examples that I typed up using something that I'm interested in for cars, or cars in general. And I have posted on Brightspace some examples that we'll cover next week as well. So that's the first part, selecting posting the preparation stage to select your topic or select your subject. And then once you post that, move forward in doing research to fully hash out, fully build out your preparation outline. Now this is a preparation outline that I wrote specifically for a civic engagement news practice speech. Now this is very detailed, not what I'm expecting from you on Tuesday, but I wanted to use the outline and show you an example of using the outline to write an informative speech. We will do, the last speech, that formal speech we'll do is a civically responsible organization speech, where you'll choose either to inform or persuade us of a civically responsible organization. And so again, that's just taking a specific slant or a specific focusing our speech to be one that's specifically about civic engagement. So this, you'll see my preparation stage. So my subject is about the voting age. General purpose stays the same for these informative speeches. It's to inform. My specific purpose is to inform. I don't know how to delete that. Forget that slash is there. Don't know why it's there. Probably just mistyped it. So to inform my audience of what? What do I want my audience to know by the end of my speech? Specifically, Tyler Okike's mission to lower the voting age. My method is I'm going to explain the how or the why. And then my type is going to be concept, because voting is more of I could talk about maybe how to vote, and that would be a process. I could talk about maybe voting law, and if I was talking about a very specific law, then that would be an object. But here I'm just talking about the voting age, and specifically what he's talking about, which is more of a belief, more of a notion. My organizational pattern is simple. It's going to be topical because, again, my method determines the information that I'm sharing in the main points of my speech. And so you'll see the main points of my speech, because it's a speech of explanation, my first is why, and my second is how. So specifically, why Generation Z is a good fit for being the ones to add into the voting rolls, and then how we would go about doing that. So again, the method that I chose told me what information I was collecting specifically from this article. So the how and the why of this subject. So my attention step, again, is where I am getting my audience's attention with a quote, a story, a humor. In this case, I have a quote from the article that I found. Rapport step, remember, building rapport is you reference some kind of common experience that everyone has most likely had. In this case, I say, I'm sure many of us have voted in an election, or at least I hope you have, right? And so, assuming, right, just hopefully everyone has had that experience. My credibility step, so why should you listen to me? Well, I'm not an expert on voting. I have voted in every election since I turned 18, and I did read this story about lowering the voting age. So saying things like, I've done research on it, I'm passionate about it, those add to your ethos, your credibility. And so that credibility step is just a sentence or a phrase that that answers the audience's question of why they should be listening to me. Then my preview step, today I would like to share with you what I've learned from this article. And essentially I am sharing with you why and how. So in my preview step, I am previewing my main points of why and how. So again, that builds in that redundancy, right? We have redundancy where we're previewing our main points. We then go through and share our main points. And then we have our conclusion where we review our main points. And we just transition our preview step to past tense and say, today I shared with you, right, the how and the why. So this is the direction you'll go after you post your preparation stage. Move forward with working on the body of your speech. In fact, that's the order we do it. We start with the preparation stage. We then transition to the body, and then we transition to the introduction and the conclusion. So we actually write it in a little bit different order than we present it. That's because we want to know what our main points are before we're able to write our preview step. That tells us what our main points are. So you'll also see my transition statements. So now that I've covered why Gen Z is the best group to add to the voting rolls, let me talk about how that would get done. So this transition statement where I'm previewing or summarizing what I just shared and previewing what I'm about to share. And then I only have two main points, so I only have one transition statement. Because when you get to the end of your last main point, you don't need a transition statement. You just say, in conclusion. And then you proceed to your review step and your memorable closing. And that's your speech. So what questions do you have about informative speaking? No questions? Make sense?
Is that example gonna be on Brightspace?
It is.
Oh, it's on Brightspace.
Yep. So if you go to course resources and click on civic engagement, and so course resources will be if you go to content and you'll see table of contents in each week. The very bottom after week 16, course resources, you'll see civic engagement news instructor example. You also see the speech outline template. Because again, I think week 4, my assignments, they're going to take you to Blackboard. So I've just got them all directly linked here into Brightspace. I've also got the other examples I shared. So those are my CARS examples. And then we'll talk about Fleece Blanket in Orlando on Tuesday. So we've not watched the super volcano video, have we?
Oh.
Okay. That tells you right there. So let's watch an example of a formal informative speech. So this example, I want you to take notes, and I want you to see if you can point out, if you can identify when she delivers her attention step, when she establishes rapport with the audience, when she builds her credibility. What does she say to make you believe that you should listen to her, that she's knowledgeable and credible? Does she preview her main points? It's also important to note that when she delivers her speech, she has a primary organizational pattern for her main points. So main point 1, main point 2, main point 3 all follow her organizational pattern, but each main point, A, B, C, that has a separate organizational pattern. So we can have both a primary and a secondary organizational pattern. So the way she has written her speech, she actually has this primary org pattern, and then each of her main points are a different organizational pattern. So see if you can recognize when she is describing about supervolcanoes. See if you can explain when she explains about the how and the why of supervolcanoes. So see if you can recognize her transition statements. Now that I've shared with you this main point, let me share with you my next main point. She doesn't say in conclusion, but she does have some, I can't remember what it is specifically, some statement that lets you know she's getting to the end. I wish she said in conclusion. Sunny Saras, who works here, is actually in the process of collecting videos this semester of current students doing these type of speeches, so we have current examples, and not these examples provided by our textbook company. So anyway, that'll be nice for in future years. But yeah, see if you can recognize everything we've talked about in regards to preparing the speech, and you'll see how it connects to how we deliver our speech. So let's listen to this example.
Hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, tsunamis. We're familiar with these natural disasters. But for all the death and destruction they cause, they're minuscule compared to the full force of planet Earth. Beneath our feet are what National Geographic calls sleeping giants that stir occasionally, but will someday wake up and roar with unprecedented force. What are these sleeping giants? In a word, supervolcanoes. Supervolcanoes don't erupt often, but when they do, they transform our world. As a geoscience major, I've been fascinated by supervolcanoes for a long time, but I know even more about them after doing research for this speech. Today, we'll first examine the mechanics of supervolcanoes. Second, we'll examine the way they shape our world. And third, we'll look at a supervolcano that's located right here in the United States. Let's begin with the mechanics. Supervolcanoes are the result of massive magma pools beneath the Earth's surface. Magma consists primarily of molten rock. As a 2014 article in the journal Nature Geoscience explains, magma seeps from deep in the Earth into giant chambers in the Earth's crust, where it cools and hardens. Over time, more magma seeps into the chamber and pushes it towards the surface. Over tens of thousands or even millions of years, enough pressure builds to produce a supervolcano. Scientists have created a scale to measure volcanic eruption. It's called the Volcanic Explosivity Index, or VEI, and it's based on the amount of debris that is released into the atmosphere by an eruption. As seen on this chart from the U.S. Geological Survey website, the VEI consists of an 8-step scale. Each step is 10 times more powerful than the preceding step. A supervolcano is up here, at the top, VEI 8. For comparison, the famous eruption of Mount Vesuvius that buried the ancient Roman city of Pompeii in 79 AD is down here, at VEI 5. A supervolcano eruption would be at least 250 times more powerful than Mount Vesuvius. According to science writer Amanda D'Amato, a supervolcano eruption is like 1,000 atomic bombs going off every second. Now that we understand some of the basics of supervolcanoes, let's take a look at the way they've shaped our world. According to the BBC, scientists have identified 15 supervolcanoes. As you can see from this map, most are located in East Asia, North America, and South America. The telltale sign of an ancient supervolcano is a giant crater known as a caldera. The photo you see here is a caldera that is now Lake Toba in Indonesia. The largest volcanic lake in the world, it was created by a super eruption 75,000 years ago. This aerial view from a NASA satellite gives you a sense of the Toba caldera, which is 18 miles wide and 60 miles long. But supervolcanoes don't just affect the immediate area. According to a report on NPR, the amount of ash propelled into the atmosphere by a supervolcano eruption could darken the sky around the world for so long that temperatures decrease by an average of 20 degrees Fahrenheit. A 2017 study in Nature Communications states that supervolcano eruptions can cause earthquakes, landslides, and tsunamis that last for tens of thousands of years. Fortunately, the likelihood of any of us being around for a super eruption is almost non-existent. The last one occurred in New Zealand 26,500 years ago. But there is a supervolcano right here in the United States. It's responsible for this, which I visited last summer. This is Old Faithful, one of 500 geysers at Yellowstone National Park. The park is also home to hundreds of hydrothermal pools, like the one you see here, which is larger than a football field. The geysers and hydrothermal pools are some of the most beautiful sights above ground at Yellowstone. But things are quite different beneath the surface. What's down there? First, there is a large magma chamber, as shown here in a picture from National Geographic. This chamber contains enough magma to fill the Grand Canyon 11 times over. But second, even though this chamber is huge, it's dwarfed in comparison to a giant magma plume that extends more than 20 miles into the earth. When Yellowstone erupts again, all of this magma will be truly devastating. I say when it erupts again because it has erupted 3 times already. 2.1 million years ago in a large eruption, 1.3 million years ago in a smaller eruption, and 640,000 years ago in a truly massive eruption. According to the US Geological Survey website, this last eruption covered more than half the United States in a layer of ash up to 40 feet deep, from California to the Mississippi River. Geologists agree, it's only a matter of time until Yellowstone erupts again. In this speech, I've tried to inform you about the sleeping giants beneath our feet. Right now, magma is dripping ever so slowly into giant chambers in the earth. One day, perhaps thousands of years from now, another supervolcano will explode again, changing our world forever. But this is no reason for us to be alarmed today. In fact, to me, it's cause for awe at these sleeping giants and what they can do.
So did you catch, she cited her sources, right? According to, she used a variety of them, right? She started out with Nat Geo. She probably got that from their website, right? They have a lot of information that's publicly available. She mentioned an NPR article, which is a news article, right? You can go to npr.org to get that. She did mention it was like a Nature Science, Nature, I can't remember specifically, but it sounded like a journal article. So she would have gone to EBSCOhost and found that journal article related to her subject. So just a variety of sources. You should have 5 sources in your speech. That should be a variety of sources like that. Did you catch that she had a variety of informative methods, right? She started out, kind of blurry. We could say that she started out explaining. I think her overall was explained essentially these supervolcanoes, what they are, how they operate. Then she started out explaining. Then she went into some of the kind of basic characteristics. So I think she transitioned a little to define, and then kind of came back to explain. Her organizational pattern, again, it wasn't necessarily in any order by date or space, so it really was all topical, organizational pattern. So that's a formal. I think this one is more like 5 or 6 minutes. I think is where it was. 6 minutes 30 seconds. So again, yours is maximum 5 minutes. Although we could adjust that. The reason I used to have all of them be 5 to 7 minutes, But because I started having classes with 30 students, it really took a long time to get through 5 to 7 minute speeches, so I reduced those down to 3 to 5. But if we take a vote, and if you want to have a 5 to, if you have more content you want to share and want it to be a 5 to 7 minute speech, we can take that vote next week. I'm up for a democracy, and if you want to do that, so 3 to 5 or 5 to 7 minutes. For your formal informative speeches, which should be in a similar vein to what we just watched. Cool. Yeah.
And then we'll have, will we be required to make PowerPoints to go along with the, perfect.
Correct. And so next week, I'll show you the informative speech about fleece blankets and Orlando. We'll also do some brainstorming. So bring your ideas, whatever you post for selecting your topic, you can bring that as well. And I'll bring my marker, and we will just start brainstorming the introduction, body, and conclusion. We'll come up with a few drafts, and so that way you get an idea for how to move forward. Then we will, either next week or the week after, we'll dive into delivery. That's where I'm at with my classes that are a week ahead. Delivery is what I'm lecturing on next week in their class, and then visual aids. And so with visual aids, we'll pull up PowerPoint. I'll show you some tips and tricks to using PowerPoint so it's quick and easy, and so that you can do exactly what she's doing. And we'll practice doing that in the Chicago Places practice speech. So that's a practice speech that will take a little bit longer because you'll create a PowerPoint. Again, after we talk about learning how to do it, you'll create a PowerPoint with a couple photos of a place, Chicago place, and then you'll inform us of this place using that PowerPoint. So we'll practice doing that before we get to the formal informative speech.
And that'll be any place? You said we could choose any place?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and again, practice speeches, not hopefully a stress-free, again, opportunity to practice what we're learning that particular week. But Tuesday, we'll practice citing our sources, specifically a news source. So arrive prepared to do that, and then we'll pick up with outlining, and we'll go through some drafts. Sound good? All right. Thank you all so much for being here. That's all I got. All right. Don't forget for your classmate introductions that we did this week, to submit documentation of some kind to Brightspace so I can assign a grade if you haven't done that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good weekend. So maybe I'll get you join us. I didn't get an email.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kat. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Get home and go to bed. 'Cause
Yes, sir.
I passed my I got my CDL. I guess because the last time I saw you all was on Tuesday, so it was before my CDL test on